Hey, I realize people like these theory videos, so I'm going to continue with it. And I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. Let's think about it. Internal combustion engine. Got pistons. Well, you can have a rotary as an internal combustion engine. So we're talking about a piston internal combustion engine. And, you know, bear with me with the wind noise because I'm on bike again, you know. But what makes the difference? What makes them different? What's the difference here? Why are they different? We all know this. We all talk about the engine. Oh, the engine's like this. Everybody knows horsepower. You know, people got an understanding of torque. People understand what it feels like when the car motivates itself. And you know, our only connection to it is to the engine. Really, is the on most cases is the throttle pedal. And in modern cars, this may not even be a physical connection. These are deeper theory. So this is going to be very basic. I know a lot of guys want to say, dive in, go tell us all the little stuff. I mean, I don't know everything, but I can tell you a little bit about this. So, of course, how many pistons do you have? Number one, but let's go first. When you have you got one piston. Is it a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke? We're going to talk about 4 strokes here. How big is it? It's going to be based on the displacement. How do you get displacement? Bore and stroke. What's the diameter of the piston in the bore? And what is the distance it travels up and down the bore? That will be the volume it displaces, hence the size. So that's where you get your CC. You get your I'm gonna look back. Yep. You get your how many ever CCs. You know, can be anything. I mean, we know you can get a tiny RC engines that are like 1 cc, basically 5, maybe something like that. You know, you got 30 cc weed eaters that are 2 strokes generally. You can have 4 strokes like that. You have single cylinder engines that are closing in on over 900 cc's, you know, close to a liter. Humongous cylinder. So put it in perspective, if you had a 1000 cc cylinder and you had a 4-cylinder made out of those specific cylinders, you'd have a 4-liter 4-cylinder. There's reasons why this isn't necessarily the most feasible deal, but that also means you'll have an 8-liter V8, especially if it's a cross-plane traditional American V8. Yes, that's somewhere over 500 cubic inches or so. I'm not sure exactly the displacement, but that's the difference. So what's the displacement in your cylinder? Then how many do you have? Now, in what arrangement? Because a single cylinder, of course, you have a lot of different forces. You have your primary, secondary, etc. balances going on based on how many times it happens over the course of one cycle. Having 2 pistons go up at the same time doubles the forces you would get with a single cylinder. So this may not be ideal. Having one go up while the other one goes down, you have a rocking couple. Having one maybe not go up exactly, maybe be at a 90 degree to the other one, you have what essentially is an inline version of a V-twin. So you kind of get a mixture of both deals here. So then you can go further. Then you got 3 cylinders. Now, generally engines will react. You can definitely understand an engine by dividing it into single cylinders, especially for output and performance purposes. You can see how much your whole engine will make if you can see what's going on in each cylinder. Now for balance purposes on everything, on actual mechanical balance, on firing order balance, on different kind of vibrational and smoothness and all that can be configured in different ways. So you have generally a common denominator, and I like to look at it like you either have engines that are on the common denominator of 2 or 3. So a 3-cylinder has each crank pin at 120 degrees. So it's essentially trying to make a triangle. And has more of a ability to roll over on itself. It's not really just up, down, up, down. You have pistons moving against each other, which makes it smoother. Still have a rocking couple issue. Of course, you got 3 cylinders now, so it's a larger overall size of the engine. You can get more displacement, of course, with more pistons. And you have this inline 3. You can have an inline 4. The inline 4, there's basically 2 different designs for inline 4s. You're never really going to see an inline 4 that's you're never going to see an inline 4 that's got all the pistons moving at the same time. That's crazy. There's a Russian guy did it on YouTube, but that's because, you know, he felt like doing it. You either have, usually what you'll have is the 2 outer pistons going up while the 2 inner pistons go down. It's generally the configuration. There are cross-plane 4 cylinders, which are essentially 1/2 of a cross-plane V8 that are used very predominantly now in modern, what's it, the Yamaha R1 or something like that. Lots of very nice characteristics. Not, of course, it's not balanced the same way a traditional 4-cylinder would be, but that does exist. You got 5 cylinders, you know, essentially really truly half of a V12. Excuse me, a V10. You have 8 cylinders. They can be inline. That hasn't really existed since the beginning of the 20th century. Very long motor with lots of torsional. The crankshaft is so long it can twist a lot. That's not good. You have V8. That's, everybody knows a V8. V8 usually have a cross-plane crank, though you have flat-plane crank V8s, which have gotten very popular. The GT350 had a cross-plane, a flat-plane V8 with a unique design. Because one of the things they wanted to do was give it some characteristics of the cross-plane, which I think is pretty interesting how they did that. And instead of having each bank having the 2 outer cylinders move up while the 2 inner cylinders move down, they had the first cylinder move up while the second cylinder moves down, while the third cylinder moves up, while the fourth cylinder moves down, all at 180 degrees separation of the cranks. Well, you know what, I'm going to end the video here. We'll splice it back up to continue with the theories on 4-cylinder and 8-cylinder, 3-cylinder, 6-cylinder, you name it, V12, V10. We'll go through all of that.
Ya todo ese juego cambió, empieza una transformación, más bien una revolución, y empieza con cada nación. Hoy tenemos que despertar y tenemos que revelar las virtudes del corazón, pa' que iluminen como el sol. Está todo en pausa, tú quieres play, todo está cambiando, lo sé. El mundo está de fiesta, de pies a cabeza, y la belleza a punto de nacer. La tierra ya revienta, todos en alerta, es el momento de la mujer. Tienes libre el corazón, vete ya de tu prisión. Es un vuelo tan divino.
Now I know I got the Ford hat on, but I really want a Chevy hat. Sue me. I'm not a specific kind of dude like that. But anyway, here we go. We're gonna get started with the build, the theory behind how all this works, because it's still not completely fully understood like most sciences are. What you can get, why you get that, what do similar type of styles get, and also how can you relate this to other motor types. Usually lowest common denominator. So I was talking before about how 6 cylinders, 3 cylinders, and 12s got something together, 5 and 10, you know, 1, 2, 1 has something to do with everybody. 2, 4, 8, etc. go together. And I'll go into also what's happening in the Malaise era, how these 4-cylinder Honda engines started to become something very important for the Malaise era. Because you can get the same power in the Malaise era. Now this is the thing, oh, you know, your 4-cylinder, you know, whatever, you got Hellcat and everything. That's so great. I love that. It shows you, let's get back to the business. But you had this motor here was rated by Honda. This is just Honda rating, and they usually underrated. We'll go into underrating as well. At in this data tune, about 150 on both sides, horsepower and torque. In the horsepower specifically, 150 horsepower was like your a motor more than double the size in the years where this was designed, and its earlier style motors were around, were just the same as the V8, 5-liter V8s, even smaller V8s. Chevy 305 is a very good benchmark. I like to look at what Ferrari did with their flat planes, another benchmark. So these are benchmarks here, tuning benchmarks. What am I trying to do with it? What am I getting? What will the operation be? But before we get there, we'll get started with the shout outs. So one thing you can do if you go online, you can look up Wallace Racing. They got a lot of great calculators to get really good information, say on, as well as Spicer parts. You can get very close estimates on horsepower output based on performance over time, like how quickly and what your trap speed, what's your end speed, and your end time at the end of an 1/8 mile or a 1/4 mile can give you, based on your vehicle weight, can give you a very accurate horsepower needed, because the power needed to do it is kind of a mathematical equation, which is why horsepower is a mathematical equation. Only torque is the physical reality force we get, and we just keep multiplying it over different ratios on gearing. Why gearing is so important, but that's another thing. So of course, F1, what they have done, what NASCAR has done, what the JDM market and the EDM market has done to get power out of very tiny engines and etc. What the bootleggers had done starting in the 1930s, well, early in the 20s, blah blah. You had racers back from when they made the first cars in the 1800s, so we're not even going to go that far right now. But the bootleggers, especially in the Great Depression, who never stopped shining. When NASCAR got formed from these guys, basically went into World War II, and the European domestic market starts getting around. You get Enzo Ferraris and guys like this starting to come up. You get the Soichiro Hondas. You get all the other guys. I mean, these guys have been around a little bit further than that. Other companies came together to become companies. These are more further car history that has actually already been covered. I can put you on. If anything, I'll put you on to the people that information does exist. So if you like any of the words I say, I'm going to try to say them as clearly as possible. Do your own research. So from WW2, then you go into the muscle car era. They peaked the muscle car era, which went into right after that Malaise in 1973 with the oil crisis and all the economic problems that caused. So you had the Malaise era, which is very important. We're not going to say one era is better than the other. These are just different eras. So muscle car era, maybe from after World War II, started coming up, and mostly peak was in the 60s. By 69, you get peak horsepower. 70, peak horsepower. 71, it starts coming down. Though the science and technology on the engines got better, and the cars started getting better, the aerodynamics started getting better. But with 73, it was over with. By 74, you start getting the new designs that'll come in a few years that will feature all the Malaise era things, such as the 1976 introduction of the Chevy 305 V8. Also the transition from leaded fuel to unleaded fuel, which took until the 90s really. All of this really didn't end until the 90s, and it really never ended, except for leaded fuel. You can't find that anymore, but it's inequalities in cars and etc. Blah blah blah. You had the tuner stage, because this is the thing about the Malaise era. You got a big ass V8 that takes so much fuel just to turn it over at idle, but this same 4-cylinder can produce more horsepower with less than half of the displacement. Like not even just cutting half of, because they've done that before. Cut half of your V8 off, make a 4-cylinder. But a purpose-built 4-cylinder would make more power than the original V8. So that's part of that. You got guys on YouTube, just like me, guys just doing this, we're just doing this, trying to put it out there like that. Everybody there, we're not 100% known yet. Maybe one day, God bless. If they're, you can be agnostic. I can question things too. So I'm not that kind of guy. Anyway, Driving for Answers does a lot of good applicational science. Engineering Explained, of course. William Moser with the cylinder lights and sound that show you the firing order. He did a great job with all that. Of course, the computer technology in the 80s and everything. all really helped get us to where we will be into the 20th century, excuse me, 21st century, to finish the 20th century. Vizio Racer shows you a lot about these different engines. Eric the car guy will tell you a lot about how dealing with these cars is. Vice Grip Garage is pretty good. Boosted Boys, Cletus and Cars, they've tested the limits. PFI Speed been doing it for the longest. This guy is just great. Richard Holdener with all the West Tech guys I already said, but I never said Richard Holdener's name. Really good scientist right there. He's an engine scientist. All the forums that used to be online from once the internet started, you had the forums, and guys would have their handle be like some witty handle. You got a maybe a GIF or animated, 2000s deal. Like how MySpace was back in the day. If you remember that. That's how a lot of these cars